Exposed, 3 spine-chilling real haunting stories with mysterious footage and forbidden images. Sarah had heard the tales about Maplewood Whispers of families vanishing without a trace, scenes playing out like the haunting footage she'd seen online, but she thought they were mere urban legends meant to scare children. Now, as she stared at her new home's flickering porch light, unease filled her chest. The house looked tired, paint chipped and cracked, every creak of the floorboards a reminder of its age. Yet it was supposed to be a fresh start for her and Jake, a refuge after the chaos of her divorce. Little did they know, they had stepped into a living nightmare. Night fell heavy and silent, but the air felt charged with something unpredictable. Each whisper in the walls seemed to echo their doubts and fears, raising goosebumps on Sarah's arms. "It's just an old house," she muttered, forcing a smile for Jake, who eyed her skeptically. But even he couldn't suppress the shiver that ran down his spine as the wind howled and shadows flickered across their living room. Jake's phone buzzed, a sudden intrusion into the oppressive stillness. He looked at it, then at her. The name of the account was anonymous. Stranger things crept into that innocent white box. "Mom! Look at this!" A chill coursed through her as she read the cryptic messages. "You shouldn't be here and they're watching." Her heart raced, and her breath quickened. Was this a prank? A cruel joke? The cafe down the street bustled with life during the day, but the tales lingered in the air like a thick fog. Sarah hadn't thought much about it until the cozy atmosphere warped into something sinister. The barista's smile felt more like a warning than a welcome. They discussed the missing families and shadowy figures between sips of coffee, their tone conspiratorial. Their stories clung to Sarah like cobwebs, each one feeding a growing paranoia that gnawed at her insides. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The evenings became a battleground of fear, the air thick with tension as they sat together, the distant murmur of laughter echoing through the house, distorted and mocking. Shadows teased at the edges of their vision, vanishing when they turned to look, leaving only cold dread in its wake. Sarah's hands trembled. Every flickering light bulb felt like an omen. Desperate, they explored the abandoned school at the edge of town. Each rusty door creaked, revealing layers of forgotten memories, whispers riding the wind like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Were they really free from the tight grip of the neighborhood? The story circled back, weaving around their ankles with ghostly tendrils. Lying in bed that night, a storm raged outside. The electricity in the air felt alive. In a moment of madness, Jake rummaged through the attic and found an old photo album filled with faces long erased from time. Their smiles were forced, unnatural, always marked missing. Panic gripped Sarah, a suffocating embrace of horror. Then, without warning, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside as shadows conspired and whispers spiraled into something unearthly. Panic seized her heart. This was only the beginning. How deep did the darkness run? Would they too become just another myth in Maplewood's haunted history? The door rattled violently as Sarah clawed at the handle, her heart pounding like a war drum echoing in her ears. "Jake! Help me!" She screamed, but her words seemed to dissolve in the oppressive air, swallowed by the shadows that crowded around them. Jake's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He stumbled backward, but then his focus sharpened. "Wait! The window!" With frantic urgency, they rushed to the closest one, its glass dark and dense like a barrier to a world that felt infinitely safer outside. Shoving against it, their combined weight was met with stubborn resistance. The window wouldn't budge, as if the house itself were holding them captive. "What is happening?" Sarah gasped, her breath quickening. Could the legends be true? Was this house somehow alive, empty yet breathing with a terrifying consciousness? The vivid conversations from the cafe echoed in her head. They watch you. They know. The door creaked, a slow and ominous sound, as if whatever was beyond it was merely biding its time. In that torturous moment, a cold draft sliced through the room, carrying with it a voice, barely a whisper, but unmistakable. "Come play." Jake froze, his face draining of color. "Did you hear that?" With a hesitant nod, Sarah felt the grip of panic tighten. "We need to get out of here." Then the room darkened. The flickering bulb overhead blinked out, plunging them into a thick, clinging blackness. Sarah's heart raced. Blind panic rooted her feet to the ground. Something was shifting in the shadows, a form twisting and turning, unnatural. She could barely distinguish its features, but its presence made her skin crawl. "Stay close," Jake shouted, his voice breaking as he grabbed her hand, moving them towards where he believed the door stood. They could barely see an inch in front of their faces as they stumbled forward through the darkness, fear clawing at their throats. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from below, the sound of heavy footsteps thundering up the stairs, reverberating through the house with malevolent intent. They turned sharply, eyes wide and uncomprehending. What was that? The crashing grew louder, each sound a foreboding reminder that someone or something was coming for them. Closer, closer it came, until the very air felt thick, suffocating. "Jake, we have to hide." Sarah gasped, but just as the words left her mouth, the shadows shifted, pulling back as if a curtain had been raised to reveal the light of a new horror. Two pairs of eyes flickered at the end of the hallway, dimly illuminated by what seemed to be an ethereal glow. The eyes were hollow, devoid of any warmth or humanity. They belonged to figures clad in tattered clothes, faces twisted into expressions of eternal despair. A chill ran down her spine, her instincts screaming for her to turn and run. But Jake stood frozen beside her, caught in the grip of terror. They look like the people in the photos," he whispered, his voice trembling. Before they could process what they were witnessing, one of the figures raised a skeletal hand, beckoning them forward. "Join us," the words echoed in Sarah's mind, drowning her thoughts in paralyzing dread. She grasped Jake's arm, pulling him back. "We have to go, now." But as she turned to flee, an unseen force slammed the door shut, sealing them back into the darkness. The whispers intensified, surrounding them with a frenzied cacophony of accusatory voices, all demanding something, expecting compliance. In the depths of her mind, a chilling realization dawned: this wasn't just an old house. It was a tomb, and they had unknowingly wandered into its grasp. As Sarah and Jake strained against the suffocating grip of the darkness, their breaths became ragged, their hearts pounding in sync with the shadowy figures closing in. Breach the threshold of the unknown or succumb to the legend they had dared to challenge. With every instinct screaming at her to escape, Sarah saw only one way out. But the cost? As the figures advanced, one question echoed louder than the others: what had they awakened? And would they ever escape? Jake's hand tightened around Sarah's as they turned, hearts racing faster than their legs could move. The door was no longer an option. The footsteps thundering up the stairs grew louder, each step echoing like a hammer against their sanity. "Over there." He pointed to a narrow archway leading into another, darker room, shrouded in shadows. The urge to flee overwhelmed any rational thought. They darted into the room, leaving the horrors of the hallway behind. Inside, the air felt heavier, almost viscous, as if the darkness had substance. An old wooden table was piled high with dust-covered objects, broken dolls, tarnished silverware, and what looked like a rusted clock that hadn't ticked in decades. A layer of grime coated everything like a shroud. "Do you think they saw us?" Sarah whispered, leaning against the wall as they caught their breath. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for some sign of safety. "I don't know," Jake replied, his voice shaky. "We have to keep quiet." As they stood there, the whispers from before swirled around them, muffled at first, but slowly rising in volume. Words twisted together in an indecipherable chant, a dark melody wrapping around their minds, tugging at their sanity. The walls seemed to throb with the pulse of the house, pressing in closer. What if it's trying to lure us? Sarah's mind raced, recalling the legends, the way people vanished in these haunted halls. What if it knows us? Jake's eyes widened with recognition. It can't. We're not part of this. Before he could finish, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room in a harsh glow that felt entirely unsettling. The sudden brightness revealed more than just the dusty artifacts. It revealed a mirror, warped and cracked, reflecting not just their terrified faces but also a twisted tableau behind them. A writhing mass of shadows coiled within the reflection, dark figures lurking just out of sight. Their hollow eyes stared hungrily, mouths silently mouthing words lost to the air. Sarah felt a surge of horror as she realized these weren't mere shadows. They looked like faces she'd seen before, carved in agony, trapped forever in this place. "Jake, look!" she gasped, pointing toward the mirror, but Jake was transfixed. "What are?" Suddenly, a shriek rang out, piercing through their shock. A sound so raw it seemed to resonate from the very walls of the house. The cacophony of whispers escalated, turning frantic, filled with pain and despair. "Run!" Sarah screamed, yanking Jake's arm, pulling him toward the door at the far side of the room. They didn't stop to think, only to escape. They burst out of the room, hearts pounding as they sprinted down the dim hallway, the shadows grasping at their ankles. The temperature dropped, each breath a cloud of terrified mist. The sound of footsteps thundered behind them, adding urgency to their flight. Just as they reached another door at the end of the corridor, a powerful force slammed against it, throwing them off balance. The door swung open unbelievably fast, revealing a room filled with the same twisted figures they had seen before, eyes glowing and mouths wide in silent screams. "No!" Sarah screamed as something cold wrapped around her ankle, pulling her down. Jake reached for her, desperation painting his features. "Help!" He lunged toward her, but the shadows surged, splitting them apart. Sarah could see Jake's horror in the dim light, the realization settling in that they might not escape together. With a final shriek, the figures stepped toward him. The glimpse into their sorrow pierced her heart, but she had no time to dwell. The whispers swarmed thick, drowning out her thoughts, her only focus on escape. "Join us!" Even as fear clawed at her mind, Sarah bolted forward, tearing her gaze from Jake and the nightmare around them. The door slammed shut behind her as she plunged into a new, darkened path beyond, uncertainty thrumming in her chest. Behind her, panic ignited in Jake's eyes. "Sarah! No!" She pressed forward, believing she just might escape. But the shadows whispered promises of their eternal grasp, and the distance between them stretched impossibly like a dark abyss. Would the door behind her seal their fate? Or was there still hope in the darkness ahead? The next room loomed, and as she stepped inside, a pulse echoed strong and rhythmic like a heartbeat. And then she saw him again. Sarah stumbled into the new room, her heart racing wildly. The pulse thumped louder now, resonating in her chest, merging with the frantic beats of her heart. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and writhing like living things. She squinted through the dim light, searching for anything familiar, any sign of Jake, yet there was only the flickering of a single bulb overhead, casting erratic shadows that spilled across the floor. The air was thick and fetid, a sour smell wrapping around her like a predator's embrace. She took a hesitant step forward, and the floor creaked ominously under her weight. "Jake!" she called, her voice strained, barely a whisper. Silence enveloped her, heavier than before. The pulse grew stronger, a heartbeat of its own, echoing around her. She tried to clear her mind, tried to focus, but all she could hear were the murmurs of those trapped souls. They clawed at her sanity, urging her to join them, promising an end to her fear. The walls seemed to sway, closing in as shadows fluttered at the edge of her vision. She forced herself to move deeper into the dim light, urging her legs to carry her forward. She was running out of time, the darkness behind her was relentless. "Sarah!" A voice floated through the space, soft yet chilling. It sounded like Jake, but it was garbled and twisted, as if coming through the very fabric of the walls. She turned sharply, searching for him, but found only more shadows hungrily licking at the corners of the room. "Jake!" She shouted again, panic clawing at her throat. "Please help me," the voice beckoned again, clearer this time, threading through the pulsating sound. She felt a tug of hope, a flicker of resolve igniting within her. There. At the far end, near an archway choked with darkness, stood a figure. If it was Jake, it was enveloped in shadows, but his shape seemed familiar. She rushed forward, arms outstretched, desperation fueling her steps. As she neared, the figure began to dissolve. Features blurred, and she gasped as what she saw was not Jake at all, but a wretched semblance of him, a twisted reflection worn thin by anguish. The eyes she once knew were now hollow, filled with unspeakable horror. "Join us," it pleaded, its voice now a chorus of the damned, echoing endlessly. "No!" Sarah screamed, stumbling backward. Her heart raced, thudding violently against her ribs as terror surged through her. She was horrified by the realization, this was just another trap. The shadows around her responded, swarming with renewed ferocity, figures moving fast. She ducked and dodged, seeking any way out of this nightmare, but the pulsing sound grew louder, drowning out her thoughts, twisting her resolve. In a mad scramble, she spotted a narrow exit, barely noticeable through the swirling darkness. Taking a deep breath, she dashed towards it, the whispers growing into a cacophony, a chorus of pleading souls echoing in her ears. "Don't leave us, we can help you." But as the darkness clawed at her from every side, she forced herself to think of Jake. She couldn't let whatever this was consume them both. With frantic energy, she burst through the threshold just as the shadows surged behind her, the weight of despair lessening as she stumbled into the next room. Light flickered again, illuminating a vast space filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. The atmosphere here was different, heavier, charged with an unmistakable electricity. On the walls, photographs hung askew, fractured moments of joy, now tarnished by something sinister. She stepped closer, fixing her eye on the faces in the frames. As she examined one carefully, the figures seemed to move, the smile twisting into expressions of anguish. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the realization hit her. They all looked familiar, not only Jake. They were all people from her life, friends and family she once cherished, their likenesses trapped here just like the whispers promised. "Sarah," it echoed again, this time much closer. She spun around, heart in her throat, recognizing the voice. But who was calling? Would it be Jake? Or something worse? As the shadows congealed, she felt the chilling grip of fear close in. A choice loomed ahead: dare to learn the truth or flee into the darkness once more. She had to know. What choice would she make? Would it bring her back to Jake or deeper into the horror? The pulse quickened, and she stood frozen, the answer drawing nearer with every heartbeat. The air shifted abruptly, tightening around her like a noose. The faces in the photographs seemed to peer into her soul, their eyes wide with unshed tears and desperate longing. "Sarah," the voice was unmistakable now, imbued with a raw, desperate energy. "Jake?" She breathed, her throat parched, each word a struggle. The shadows grew denser, swirling around her in a hypnotic dance, beckoning her closer to the walls. The overwhelming urge to flee clawed at her, but her feet felt glued to the ground. The flickering light above buzzed with a low hum, like a warning, and the more she stared into the faces of her lost loved ones, the deeper the panic sank into her bones. They were trapped. Just like Jake. Tearing her gaze away from the portraits, she turned back to the room, trying to ground herself in reality. Each breath felt heavy with despair. "Where are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Help," the reply echoed, now layered with a strange echo, as if countless souls were pleading together. A wave of dread crashed over her, and she stumbled back, almost tripping on a corner of a sheet-covered chair. Then, from behind her, another sound emerged. A soft whispering, like rustling leaves, rising and falling, encircling her. She whirled around to see a dark shape forming in the corner of the room, almost too dark to comprehend, pooling into a silhouette. A face emerged, a slim, elongated figure deep in shadow. "Look what you've done to me," it hissed, the voice mocking, familiar yet distorted. Frozen in place, Sarah's chest tightened. This wasn't just any voice, it was her mother's mom. Sarah gasped, shock ripping through her. She reached towards the ghostly figure, though instinct told her to recoil. The woman's face warped between sweetness and sorrow. "Sarah, save us before it's too late." "No." Her heart raced at the implication. These figures weren't just lost, they were like her. Stuck in this wretched limbo, sounding the alarms for hope she didn't know she could fulfill. "Your choice determines their fate," the murmur shifted, still echoing, deepening into a singular voice once more. The shadows writhed in delight, hungry for her next move. "What do you mean?" she shouted, a sense of defiance struggling to surface against the dread. "If you stay, you'll join them," the figure beckoned. "But if you leave, you may yet escape." There was a slick promise hiding behind the words, a chance for salvation laced with the underlying truth that perhaps choosing to abandon her loved ones was as unthinkable as joining them. They were all here. Her friends' faces had begun to emerge from the mist of shadows surrounding her, whispering in pain. "Help us, save us!" A tremor rippled through her, threatening to split her apart. It wouldn't end. "Not here. Not now. I can't just leave you," she cried, her decision recoiling back on her. "Then suffer or save them. Your choice." The shadows darkened, pulling closer, tangible dread creeping into her skin. The dim light flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that danced in tandem with her rising anguish. The photographs on the wall began to convulse, shadows stepping out of them, intertwining with the twisted reflections of her family. They grasped at her, fear mingling with the hopeful desperation in their eyes. Their cries filled the room, a chilling blend of love and torment that tore at her heart. Resolute, she forced herself to take another step forward. "I will save you." And just like that, the room erupted into chaos. The shadows swarmed, filling every crevice, suffocating all sound. "Sarah! Help me!" Jake's voice cried once more from an unseen place, a chilling reminder that time was running out. A sudden clarity struck her. She had to make her choice, one way or another. She had to act before the very fabric of her love began to unravel. But how? As the shadows crashed around her, her hand instinctively reached out, nearly touching the wall of photographs. What lay beyond it? In that moment, she held the power of life and death. A choice sparked in her chest. Would she fight to save them, or would the darkness claim her as its own? Behind her, the shadows pulsed in anticipation, waiting for her decision, a choice that would alter everything. And with her pulse pounding in her ears, Sarah prepared to embrace whatever fate awaited her, hoping she could still reach Jake before it was too late. What would she unleash upon them all? The shadows surged, their cold breath prickling Sarah's skin, wrapping around her like the grip of a vengeful ghost. She stood on the precipice of a decision that would either tether her soul to the voices calling for help or shatter whatever pain she carried to escape the nightmare. "Sarah!" Jake's plea echoed, desperate and raw, sending a wave of hot fear washing over her. It ignited a fire within her. She wouldn't allow them to vanish into oblivion, to be forever lost. While she held the chance to pull them back, time bled into an eternity. Heart racing, she steadied herself, her fingers brushing against the wall of photographs. Each framed face burned into her mind, their expressions twisted with anguish, grasping at her with more than just desire. They reached for their lives. "I won't let you go," she vowed, the weight of her words sinking into the darkness. The shadows pulsed ominously, sensing her resolve. "Choose, Sarah. Choose." They chanted in a symphony of haunting echoes, their cacophony twisting through the air like smoke. Would choosing to save her family mean complete surrender to the shadows? Or could she carve a path for them back into the light? A shocking clarity struck. She could leverage the connection Jake had shared with her since childhood. "Jake!" she shouted, the name roaring off her tongue like a tidal wave. I believe in you. You can find your way back to me. The shadows momentarily recoiled, hesitating as if taken aback. In the silent beat that followed, Sarah saw a shimmer crack through the dense atmosphere surrounding her, an almost ethereal glow flickering at the edges of her vision. "Hold on to my voice," she shouted, desperation fueling her words. "Follow it." She refocused, calling on every cherished memory, shared laughter, secrets whispered in the night, those fragile moments of safety. The photographs began to tremble, a flickering light igniting within the frames. They reacted to her memories, feeding off her determination and flooding the room with warmth. The twisted silhouettes of her loved ones flickered, their forms beginning to solidify, battling against the pull of the shadows. Sarah, her mother's voice trembled in response, laced with relief and fear. "It's so dark," encouraged, Sarah pressed on. "Close your eyes. Remember me. Remember us. You're not alone." Suddenly the shadows writhed back, their haunting wails intensifying, shaking the house to its very foundation. Walls rattled and dust rained down as if the house itself were alive, resisting her efforts. "No. You can't take her." A voice screeched, melding with the tremor of anger as a twisted shape lunged toward her. The entity lunged closer, long fingers narrowing into claws, hungry for her soul. The darkness was furious at her defiance. "You've awakened their hope," it snarled, baring teeth that morphed into shadowy tendrils. "You will pay." But she refused to be frightened into submission again. "Jake!" she screamed, a primal yell that echoed in her bones. "Guide them back. Hold on." The glow grew brighter, almost blinding, the energy pulsed with the strength of their shared memories and love. It tore through the suffocating darkness, scattering it like ash in the wind. For a brief moment, she saw glimpses of Jake racing through a tide of shadows, fighting against the grim force trying to swallow him whole. "Sarah, I see you," he called, a flicker of light illuminating his face from within the storm. "I'm coming." But before she could grasp the magnitude of his words, all at once, the shadows lunged forward, and the room erupted into a tumult of screams and darkness, punctuated by blinding lights. "You cannot leave!" the voice shrieked, thick with rage. Sarah felt herself pulled from every direction, the ceiling dropping and the floor rising, the air thickening against her throat. "Fight!" she shouted with every ounce of strength, an echo that lit the corners of hell. With her heart threatening to burst, Sarah braced herself for whatever would happen next. The struggle was only just beginning. Before her stood two paths, but what lingered ahead was a choice. More perilous than she ever imagined. Could she save him, or would the shadows take them both? As she glimpsed the last remnants of light, a new whisper crept into her ears, promising comfort and ruin all at once. Not all souls can be saved. What terrifying truth awaited her? The shadows taunted, their whispers slithering into the very core of Sarah's mind. Each word felt like ice, creeping into her veins. "Not all souls can be saved," echoed again, chilling her to the bone. She struggled against the weight of despair, aware of how close she was to losing everything that mattered. "Jake!" A cry wrapped in longing burst from her lips. The flicker of light was her only compass in the suffocating dark. She could feel the clawing shadows, their cold tendrils seeking her, wanting to crush her resolve. Her breath hitched, with every ounce of courage she could muster, she embraced the memory of her brother's laughter the last time they played together, the warmth of the summer sun on their backs. "Remember us. Remember joy," she shouted, her voice rattling like thunder in the storm of despair that surrounded her. The shadows convulsed, emitting a guttural roar that echoed through her bones. "You'll suffer for this," it shrieked, a cacophony of rage that threatened to swallow her whole. But within that chaos, she glimpsed a flicker of hope. Jake's form surged forward, straining against the pull of the darkness. She could see him now, pale and strained, eyes wide with determination. "I can't hold on much longer. He screamed, his fingers outstretched, reaching for her through a veil of blackness. The shadows clawed at him, intent on ripping him from her grasp. "No!" Sarah cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks. The desperation within her deepened. "You must fight, Jake. Find the light." The walls bristled, shifting as if the house itself were angry with her defiance. Distorted faces emerged from the darkness, twisted by agony, their mouths wide in silent screams. They clawed at her, whispering dreadful secrets of despair, warning her not to continue. Each ghastly visage reminded her of the price of failure: the families torn apart, friendships shattered, love stripped from existence. "Stay with me," she howled, determination spurring new strength. "I believe in you. Just a little more." Suddenly, the air crackled with energy and electric desperation born of love. Jake's glow brightened as memories surged between them. It was as if he found a spark within himself, a flicker of hope ignited by her belief. "Sarah, I'm coming!" he roared, pushing past the shadows that writhed around him, his spirit battered but not broken. As he drew nearer, the room around her distorted violently, walls melting like wax, threatening to collapse. The shadows fought ferociously, and it felt as if the very fabric of her existence was unraveling. "You will lose everything." "No!" Sarah vowed, eyes blazing with resolve. "I will not." With a roar that echoed beyond the bounds of sanity, the shadows lunged one last time. Sarah felt a pull, a dangerous force trying to pull her into the abyss. But the light from Jake pierced through the gloom, a beacon in the madness. She could feel his strength, hear the steady rhythm of his heart, a heartbeat solidifying around her like armor. In an instant, the room erupted into a brilliant light. The shadows screamed, recoiling from the luminance, splintering into wisps of darkness that scattered like leaves in a storm. "Together!" she yelled, her voice a clarion call rising above the tumult. "Together, we can do this." As she reached for Jake, something remarkable happened. He mirrored her movement. Their hands nearly touched, the gap closing with each heartbeat. The walls warped, groaning with the desperation of the shadows still trapped within. Then, the shadows surged one final time. "You cannot escape!" they howled, a chorus of malevolence ringing with finality. With tears of determination blurring her vision, Sarah dove forward, and just as their fingers connected, she felt a jolt. A shattering wave of light engulfed them. A roar erupted from the air, a battle cry of liberation as jarring and terrific as thunder, but then the light dimmed, and in that split second of uncertainty, shadows circled back, attempting to reclaim what they had lost. "Sarah!" Jake's voice cried, strained now, laced with panic. The shadows were still hungry. Had they truly escaped? Or had they only sealed their fate as vessels caught between the light and a world of endless darkness? The weight of her choice loomed over her, the echoes of the shadows whispering, insistent and sinister. What price would she pay to save her brother? As the shadows swirled and darkness crept back, panic seeped into her heart. Questions swirled like the ghastly mist around her. Would they be free, or was this just the beginning? Before their fate was revealed, the air thickened with dread, and a new voice whispered a name familiar, yet laced with betrayal. Sarah! What awaited her in the depths of that voice? The darkness pressed in, an unbearable weight, like a black suffocating blanket. Sarah felt like she was at the center of an abyss, trapped in a world where hope and despair danced a maddening waltz. As that voice called her name, it curled around her thoughts, pulling memories from depths she had locked away. "Sarah!" it echoed, dripping with a slick, icy malice. Suddenly, a horrific vision surged in her mind. Her childhood home, happy, innocent, burning with fierce flames. She had watched helplessly as the walls crumbled, taking everything she had known with them. That day had changed everything, leaving a void inside her that had drawn the shadows closer for years. A cold shiver skated down her spine. The voice was a ghost, a remnant of her past, cloaked in layers of resentment. "Jake!" she cried again, desperation flooding her voice as she fumbled through the darkness. "Where are you?" Whispers swirled around her, distorted and hissing memories she'd rather forget. "You let them die, you weren't strong enough, no." The denial erupted from her throat, breaking the veil of despair like glass. "I'm not going to listen to you." But the voice persisted, rising above the chaos. "You know the truth, Sarah. You're just as culpable. They needed you, and you ran away." Each word clawed at her sanity, and with every taunt, the darkness pulsed, coiling tighter. Panic fluttered in her chest like a trapped bird. "Stop!" she screamed, without knowing who she was addressing, the shadows or her own dreadful memories. Jake's light flickered nearby, a beacon she could no longer ignore. "Sarah!" He reached out desperately, his form wavering like a mirage in the engulfing haze. "We have to fight together." A flicker of resolve ignited in her chest. "I will fight." The shadows snarled, furious at her defiance, the tortured faces swirling around, their chaotic screams harmonizing into one deafening roar. Just then, Sarah spotted an exit, a glimmer of ethereal light slicing through the dark. But the shadows, sensing her hope, lunged at Jake, trying to sever their connection. She felt the bond between them unravel like frayed rope, stretching thin as they neared the light. "Hold on. Don't let go," she howled. "I won T." Jake's shout was fierce, but the shadows mercilessly clawed at his essence, dragging him into the depths of despair. A surge of adrenaline tore through her. Sarah's heart thundered as she pushed forward, chasing after that light. "I'm coming," she shouted as she fought against the gnashing darkness, grasping for Jake. The pulsing void reached out, eager to consume them both, a vicious tide gnawing at her will. The light pulsed invitingly, but the shadows retaliated. "You'll never escape," they hissed in 1,000 tortured voices. "You belong to us. You always have." But an ancient fire ignited within her. She could hear laughter again, the joyous echoes of childhood reverberating against the screams of the shadows. "I am stronger than you," she declared, summoning every bittersweet memory. With one final surge, she lunged toward the light, and just as she felt the shadows clawing at the fabric of her soul, she grasped Jake's hand. In that moment, warmth ignited around them. The shadows writhed in horror, screaming in agony as the light enveloped them like a wave crashing on a shore. Together, they spiraled into the brilliance, but the soothing embrace of the light felt fragile. "Is this it?" Jake panted, his voice trembling. "What if it's just a lie?" Sarah whispered, fear wrapping around her heart like a noose. The light flickered, and in the eerie stillness that followed, the shadows laid their final siege, whispering Emma's name into the silence, obscured yet overwhelmingly present. Before they could retreat into the calming light, a dark figure crossed their path, flickering slightly. A silhouette with familiar features, smiling malevolently. "Welcome home, Sarah," it breathed, each word a dagger. What awaited her now in the arms of the familiar tormentor? The figure stepped closer, its features sharpening into a cruel resemblance of Sarah's past. The darkness around them seemed to thicken, swirling like storm clouds ready to burst. "Do you remember me, Sarah?" it taunted, the voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "I was the one who cared, who always wanted you to be your best. Yet, you turned away. You left me behind, just like you left them." A sick leap of disbelief clawed at Sarah's throat. "No, you're not real. You can't be." But deep down, she knew, the guilt was all too real. "Ah, but I am as real as the fire you watched consume everything you loved. You can't escape it." The figure's eyes sparkled with a malicious glee. Jake squeezed her hand tighter. "Don't listen to it, Sarah. This is just a trick," he shouted, his voice strained. "Just a trick?" The shadowy figure cocked its head, shifting effortlessly into faceless forms that surrounded them. "We are all the things you chose to forget. The pain that filled your heart. The void left by your weakness. An icy dread filled Sarah's veins. She could feel the shadows pressing in around them, trying to separate her from Jake. She thought of the flames, of how they devoured her life in a blaze of agony. It would always be there, festering, twisted. Let go of her. Jake shouted, his desperation splintering into rage. You can't break her down like this. We'll fight. Fight? The figure laughed, a guttural sound that cut through Sarah like shards of ice. You think strength will save you? You're nothing without me without this. The light behind them pulsed, flickering like an old film reel caught in a loop. Would it shatter entirely, leaving them at the mercy of the shadows? No! She screamed. A resolve surged through her, powerful as a tidal wave. You don't control me anymore. The face twisted, mouth stretching into a gaping grin that widened impossibly. The shadows writhed in response, torn by her surge of defiance. Does the truth scare you that much? It sneered, advancing closer until the rancid scent of decay wrapped around her. Face it, Sarah. You never chose to come back. You ran from love. From family. From truth. In that moment, for an instant, the darkness hesitated almost as if it feared her newfound strength. Her memories, once haunting and guilt-ridden, began to shift. They transformed into glimmers of survival, flashes she could harness. I'm not turning away again, she whispered, heart racing. I've carried my hurt long enough. The light behind them surged once more, casting a wider halo around her and Jake. The figure pushed against the walls of her mind, but it was slipping. Desperation spun in its eyes. Together. Jake urged again, pulling her close. They tightened their grip as the shadows swarmed. Hold on. Sarah felt the warmth of light merging with the power of her memories, each one a stepping stone across a flood of darkness. Together. She echoed, voice unwavering. Just then, a scream erupted, raw and primal. The shadow broke, shattering into billions of particles that danced violently away from them, screeching in desperation, but in the chaos, Sarah saw something the dark figure had transformed. Its grin faded away, replaced by a face she hadn't expected. Why did you abandon me? The words came as soft, hurt whispers, the shadows fragmenting around it. Her heart sank. No, it can't be. Emma? The darkness wavered, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like there was room for hope. But would she ever find peace, or was this another trick meant to trap her? Sarah, look out! Jake shouted as tumultuous waves of darkness surged forward again. Caught off guard, she realized the fight had only just begun, and the true enemy was still lurking between the shadows. What sacrifice would she need to make to discover what was really waiting ahead? The shadows swirled around Sarah and Jake, a storm of anguish entwined with every horrifying memory that threatened to pull them apart. But Sarah was done being afraid. I want to let you take him. She declared, her voice steady and loud, soaring above the chaos, echoing with defiance. Your bond means nothing here. The twisted figure of Emma hissed, its features flickering like a dying flame caught in the wind. You think love conquers all? You've seen the truth. Your heart carries the weight of your failures. They'll be lost if you choose him. The essence of her former best friend distorted, mixing innocence with malice, like a painting scrawled with dark strokes. Emma, stop. Sarah shot back, desperately clawing at the memories that linked them, the moments that once held joy. I know your pain, but I won't let it consume me or my brother. The air thickened as she recounted days spent laughing, sharing secrets on summer evenings, the warmth of their friendship. Jake stood beside her, his grip firm, a lifeline in the iron grasp of despair. Sarah! He yelled, his determination melding with hers. The shadows responded to their connection, swirling angrily yet hesitantly, as if the light they radiated pushed against the oppressive weight of sorrow and darkness. The shadowy figures loomed, growing more restless as they fed on the anguish around, growling with discontent for each flicker of hope igniting in their hearts. Face it. Their pleas mean nothing, your efforts are in vain. Emma's figure loomed larger, twisting and contorting into a grotesque skull-like visage, screaming in rage. But Sarah's heart thudded a steady rhythm. Hope. We've seen loss, she shouted, voice strong, unwavering. But we've also felt love. Together, we can shatter the darkness. Suddenly, the light pulsed, a brilliant beacon igniting from within her as memories flooded back the dear faces of her friends and family, the laughter, the shared tears, moments of happiness. Each piece began to connect, forming a tapestry rich with love and strength. This is not just about fear. It's about our past, our bonds that can never be severed. Jake squeezed her hand tighter, his face etched in concentration, his own memory sparking with recognition. They were not alone, countless souls were here beside them, silent witnesses to their struggle. And together, they dug deep within, reaching for something beyond despair. We are here. Sarah shouted into the cascade of darkness. We won't abandon anyone again. Their combined will shot forth into the darkness, illuminating everything around them. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as if burned by the light of a million stars. No! Emma screamed, her figure dissolving, replaced by hundreds of faces all twisted, all crying out. You cannot escape your past. They fought against it, channeling the voices of their loved ones, layers of hope merging into a clarion call. We are stronger than our mistakes. They rallied together. We choose to fight for love. Together, forever. With every heartbeat, the light intensified until it burst forth like a torch ablaze, casting soft shadows from their silhouettes as they surged through the darkness. The agony of the figures spilled around them like shattered glass, retreating from the radiant warmth that filled the space, and just like that, a screaming void ruptured, spilling forth shades of yesterday, the distorted faces shrieking as the echoes of despair shattered into particles of nothingness. You chose wrong. The remnants of Emma cried, disappearing. Believe, Sarah. Jake shouted, the proximity of the light igniting their essence with a fervor unlike before. In that moment, they leaped forward hand in hand, emerging through the veil of shadows into something beautiful. A soft glow greeted them, familiar and warm. They found themselves back on the front porch of their home, the air fragrant with honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. The moon hung wide and bright overhead, it painted everything in silver, calming the chaos that had poured forth only moments before. Sarah released a shaky breath, disbelief mingling with relief. We're safe? Yes, Jake replied breathlessly, eyes sparkling with hope. It's over. We won. But even as they took in the peacefulness surrounding them, shadows curled at the edges, waiting, lurking. The echoes of cries and pleading voices faded like ghosts at dawn. I could still hear them. Sarah said, a tremor in her voice. They had won, but not without a cost. Was their past truly behind them, or were they merely breathing for now? In the stillness of that moment, they both understood peace was an ongoing journey. They had fiercely battled the dark, saved each other and so many others trapped in that twisted void. As dawn broke over Maplewood, painting the world anew, Sarah squeezed Jake's hand, which felt like the strongest tether to the present. They would face whatever specters might linger, together, they took a step forward, the weight of the past shifting off their shoulders. Hope blossomed in the warmth of a new dawn, illuminating the roads ahead. And as they walked, they understood that love had not only saved them, it was now their guiding light. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Remember, only true fans understand how critical it is to support the channel through these actions.